friends. Welcome to today's we're going to do open Q&A. So, not any particular topic. I just thought like once in a while it's nice to have just an open conversation so that you can pop in your questions about anything do you want to know about healthy hormones, how to balance your hormones. And so while we're waiting for a larger audience to gather together, um, this week I'm just going to do a quick recap. This week we're talking about the impact of inflammation on your hormones, and we're talking about inflammation in connection to histamine and therefore allergies. And then next week we're going to be talking about the connection between menopause and estrogen dominance, which is a really interesting one because a lot of women think that if I'm in menopause, there's no way I have estrogen dominance. And that is not correct, as you're going to find out. In fact, estrogen dominance in menopause is particularly problematic, and I'm going to talk about it on Wednesday next week. We've got a really cool talk coming up Thursday next week with Dr. Maya Shetreat about psychedelics. And so not in the context of like psychedelics to, this is not the 1960s, right? This is not like to get stoned and go tripping, and it's to really heal. So you might have been seeing like psychedelics being used in mainstream media. And so I found it fascinating once I got to know Dr. Maya Shetreat about like how psychedelics can be really beneficial for people who are not responding to prescription medications. So that's going to be an interesting one. Tomorrow, Thursday, I'm talking to my very good friend, my bestie, Dr. Isabella Wentz, about her new book that's coming out about adrenals and adrenal health in menopause and just the overall connection to adrenals and other hormones. And so, as you probably have guessed, it's hard to have balanced hormones when your adrenals are, on fire and when you're exhausted and tired. So that's that. And so today we're doing open Q&As, which means that I don't have any specific topic in mind, unless you would like me to talk about something. So we are doing an open floor, and as long as your questions are related to hormones, I'm very happy to answer them. So just post it here. I'm doing that on Instagram, so that's where I'm looking. And if I'm looking this way, that's for our Facebook and YouTube followers. So as you guys are thinking about your question or maybe typing it out, I would just do like a quick recap. What's really fascinating, what a lot of people don't realize, is the connection between inflammation and having allergies. And so, it's like a lot of people think, oh, it's just such a normal thing to have allergies, right? Like everybody's got allergies now and everybody's walking around with antihistamines and stuff. And if you follow us on social media, which I think you are, because that's why you're here, we talked a lot about like what's the problem with antihistamines, right? They impact your kidney, liver, and the gut. But the worst thing is that they actually kind of desensitize you from they make you sensitive basically to the triggers even more so, right? And so some of you have written to us and said, yeah, I've experienced an improvement with the antihistamine. The minute I stopped taking it, my allergies became even worse. And so, if you follow us for a while, you know that we are all about addressing the root cause, right? So it's like, where is the problem coming from? And let's try to fix this. If I have a leak, right there in my house on the roof, right? Then, instead of going and painting it over, I would want to get a roofer to come and help me fix it, right? And so with our health is exactly the same thing. So inflammation causes allergies. Inflammation also causes so when I say allergies, is because it's a histamine overflow. And a histamine overflow, actually, there's an intimate relationship between histamine and estrogen dominance. So when you are in a sort of allergy flare-up mode, you have an histamine overflow. That histamine causes the mast cells to produce even more histamine. So now your sensitivity to allergies is even higher. So that's the reason why so many of you have said before, during the time of like seasonal allergies, my symptoms of estrogen dominance have become even worse. Like my PMS is worse, my breast hurts worse, my period is worse, my my breast lumps have becoming even bigger, and so on and so forth, right? My hot flashes outburst, right? And so really this whole week, if you look at all our social media posts, I don't want to repeat this because I did a whole live call last week about it for an hour, talking about how do you lower inflammation using diet, using supplementation. And remember that, even though I sell supplements, and it's probably bad for my business to say that, but I also want to be honest with you that you cannot out supplement a good diet. Okay. Meaning that if your diet is shit and you're eating a lot of inflammatory foods, you're still living on gluten and coffee, and you're having 3 glasses of wine every night, inflammation, no amount of supplements is going to reduce all of this and take away that inflammation. So just be mindful of that your sleep, your clean diet, and starting off with anti-inflammatory diet, such as both my cookbooks are based on that, right? It's a really great starting point to help you lower the inflammation. When you add some supplements, these supplements are going to work like a charm, if you will, when you combine it with a clean diet. So lower inflammation, your allergies are going to go down, your hormones are going to be a lot more balanced. The other thing that inflammation does, and then I'm going to jump into questions in just a second. The other thing that inflammation does is that there's 2 more things. It releases even more cortisol. So we're going to be talking about cortisol and adrenals tomorrow on Thursday with Dr. Isabella Wentz. But then the other thing that happens is that what a lot of people don't realize, that inflammation actually shuts down your cell receptors from hormones, meaning that you can have sufficient amount of hormones circulating in your blood, but these hormones are just not able to get through the cell, through the receptor. Receptor is like a door into the cell, and that's when the hormones are doing its work, and that door gets shut when you're inflamed. So a lot of people go like, I got tested, and I've got sufficient progesterone, I'm taking progesterone, and I'm on estrogen, and my estrogen is good, my thyroid is good, whatever, right? But I'm highly symptomatic, right? Right. And the answer is because you're inflamed, your receptors are shut down, and you're not getting the hormone into the cell. Okay. So let's jump into some questions. Jen, let's pop up some questions on Deborah is saying my hot flashes stopped for at least a year and I'm postmenopausal. All of a sudden I'm getting them again. Is this normal? Yeah. So is this normal? No. No. But can you do something about it? Yes. So hot flashes are caused, and Deborah, by the way, if I'm talking fast and this is all new to you, then the good news is that we have a very comprehensive article on our blog post on hormonesbalance.com. Hormones with an S, hormonesbalance.com is the blog site. And if you just search for hot flashes, there's a full article. Hot flashes boil down to 3 things, you guys. Low estrogen levels. Number 2 is inflammation. Number 3 is blood sugar imbalance. And so depending on what's causing yours, that could be the issue. So for example, Deborah, in your case, the question is, has suddenly your estrogen dropped even more? Like, have you changed your prescription? Have you been doing any, or is just part of aging, like your estrogen is dropping? Or you're more inflamed because suddenly there was more stress in your life. Maybe there is 1 or 2 glasses of wine every night, right? That can be contributing towards your inflammation. Or is it because you suddenly having like this, like a few more cookies a day that might be impacting your blood sugar balance, right? So look into these 3 things. I had hot flashes last year before I was going to, some of you may know, I did a road trip for 5 months in my camper van from May till September last year on the East Coast. It was a lot of fun, but the preparation was not fun. And so I got really stressed out, and I think there was just a lot of stuff going on. And so like the stress of it has caused me to have horrendous hot flashes. And so the first part of my trip for the first month, I was just dealing with breathing and just calming everything down, stop drinking wine, stop drinking coffee, which I started doing that, actually, believe it or not, even though I know coffee doesn't serve me well. Anyway, coffee is highly inflammatory for me, right? So, and that has helped a ton. So Deborah, you just need to find out what is your cause of what is your cause of your hot flashes. All right, Jen, let me do one from Instagram here. So Lindsay's saying, does progesterone cream really work? So many mixed reviews on this. Yes, it does. In fact, I just doubled my progesterone and I'm sleeping. You see this Oura ring I'm wearing here, right? So that's, if I show you the inside of the ring, it's got all these sensors, and these sensors is what helps it determine the quality of my sleep. And I can tell you right now, I've been getting 2.5 hours of deep sleep, which I've never had before. Deep sleep is, I used to get like an hour to hour and a half. I'm getting 2.5 hours, and I've changed nothing else apart from doubling my progesterone dose. And so, I think these sort of things, there are some people who progesterone doesn't work as well. Part of it is what we are finding is when people have very high inflammation. So this is what I was talking about earlier. When you are inflamed, your cells like shut down, and you have this progesterone that's just circulating around, and it's probably your body's reacting to it. So some people are having adverse reactions. At the end of the day is you've got to try it to know. And if it doesn't, like, our refund policy is that if you don't like something, within 30 days, you can just return it and we can either refund you or get store credit. So Juice Mom Living is saying, sterilized at 25, now 50, navigating perimenopause symptoms. Protocols the same. So great question. So when you are sterilized, I mean, the symptoms will be low estrogen, right? Probably low progesterone, and excuse me. So yeah. So if you spend some time on our website, there's a lot of resources to empower yourself and what to do. And definitely, upping. I'm a big fan of not doing bioidentical progesterone on your own unless you are managed by a physician, just because that's the reason why we don't sell estrogen in our store, even though we could, and you can get over the counter quite easily. The reason why I stay away from that, and I encourage you to be very careful if you want to do bioidentical estrogen or DHEA or testosterone yourself and DIY it, is that estrogen, first of all, DHEA and testosterone get then converted to estrogen, right? And then estrogen gets broken down to clean and dirty estrogens. And we're going to talk a lot more next week when we talk about menopause and estrogen dominance. Why is that a problem, especially menopause? And so if you are not breaking down estrogens in a positive way, then that is a problem. And you're giving yourself not only estrogen dominance, but in a prolonged usage of it and prolonged production of estrogen dominance, dirty estrogens, it can lead to some pathology, including estrogen and cancer. So you're going to be really, really careful, or know how to order your own tests, such as Dutch test, to monitor on how your estrogens gets broken down. But for Juice Mama Living, I would say start off with a diet. Start off with a diet that's highly anti-inflammatory, that does not use gluten, dairy, soy, corn, temporarily eggs, and then see how you do. And then you can start on, correcting a lot of things, like, is your progesterone low? By the way, you guys, our hormone balance quiz has fallen apart. Technology is wonderful and can be a real problem at times. And so for some reason, it just fell apart, doesn't work. So we are in the midst of fixing that with our lovely new technical manager. And once we relaunch it, hopefully by sometime in a couple of weeks, then you will be able to take the quiz and get a lot of clarity on whether, what kind of hormonal imbalance do you have. So, and then from there, the answers are going to point you towards all sorts of resources to empower yourself and know what to do. Okay, Jen, let's take another one from this side over here. Diana is saying, or Deanna is saying, I am postmenopausal and I'm wondering about very dry skin. Yeah, so very dry skin can be, skin quality, muscle wasting, right? Sagging skin are more of the symptoms that are connected to low testosterone, low DHEA, low estrogen, right? When it comes to dry skin, Deanna, I would suggest for you to do the elimination diet and try that more so than just looking at hormones. And then the second thing, you can look at hormones. The reason why I say that is because a lot of people develop food sensitivities without realizing that it can really be the cause of a lot of issues. And also, as we age, we become a little bit more sensitive to foods than before. So remember that your health is very dynamic, meaning that the problems you're having now, you may fix them, something else might pop out, right? And it's never the same. It's not a linear progression with your health. It's just not. So the reason why I say this about the dry skin is because, you know, my sister had dry skin on her hands for the longest time, and it was so awful that she literally had an entire collection of hand lotions of various brands and types in her kitchen cabinet. I've never seen so many hand lotions in my life, and none of it was helping her. And you know how it is when you get on this health journey and you want to, you know, you tell your family that, like, hey, you know, maybe you can try this to help yourself. And they're like, nah, no, you're not a doctor. Don't tell me what to do, right? And so instead they go and suffer for years. And so that was the case with my sister. And then one day she says, you know what, I'm going to give up gluten because she had, I can't remember what the trigger was, but she's like, I'm just going to give up gluten, not because you told me, but because I just gonna, you know, just because I want to try it. And long and behold, giving up gluten, and her hands have completely recovered. Like, she has beautiful, normal hands. And it's very funny. She used to use like all these excuses of like, you know, oh, I'm a working mom. Like, you know, you don't have 3 children, so your hands are never dry. And I'm like, yeah, I do some housework too, you know, like, come on. It's, you know, so anyway, my point is that, and, you know, I talked a lot about elimination diet a couple of months ago, that when you do the elimination diet, it's actually quite amazing when you eliminate inflammatory foods. Not only your inflammation, it's like so many things can change, you guys. Not only your inflammation comes down and your allergies reduce, but you can sleep better, you think better, your brain is a lot faster, your skin can improve, you know, whatever. It's just like these ailments that you have can actually improve. When I was a young practitioner, when I just first started practicing, you know, when I had a client come in and I'll be like chasing every single symptom. Oh, they have dry skin, and then they have ringing in the ears, and then they have zits on their face, and then they have, and you just like try to find these solutions for every one of these symptoms. And then I realized, and as I started doing this work and then got more and more training, that when you address like the diet part and you really hone in of what's working for a person, and unfortunately every person's diet is a little different, so what works for you might not work for me, and vice versa, is that you know, so many symptoms suddenly disappear. And that's one of the wonderful things about diet, and really as a starting point. All right, let me do one more from Instagram here. Lisa is asking, do you have to take a 5-day break from progesterone cream if you no longer have monthly cycles? Yes, you do. And the only reason is that it's basically to give your body a break, and also to kind of like create a sort of absence and then presence again, so that cells become a lot more sensitive to progesterone. So yeah, so you can definitely do that. And then I did a video on Instagram, I think it's pinned to the top, you guys, about where to apply progesterone. So if you haven't seen that one, that might be very helpful. And the progesterone is like way to apply it for fast action. So like, you know, where you don't have fat cells. So like, you know, here you've got décolletage, your neck, you can apply it on your wrist and your feet, etc. And then for slow acting, so it's like something that acts throughout the night, you do that on where you have fat tissue, like inner thighs, your abdomen, your buttocks, right? Your breast, you can put progesterone on the breast as well, especially if you have fibrocystic breasts. So do that too. What is the best to take for insulin resistance? Lindsay is asking. So the first thing you want to do when you have insulin resistance, change your diet, period, right? So one thing I want to say, you guys, here, and this is not, Lindsay, directed at you, but it's just generally a comment. You know, I think we grew up in a society, right? And that includes me, where you go like, I've got a problem, like insulin resistance, or I've got zits on I can't sleep, or I don't want to get pregnant, whatever, right? And it's like the first thing I do is like, what's the pill that's going to help? And then as we go on this health journey, we transition to, well, I don't want to do this prescription drug thing because it's got a lot of side effects, but I want to do like, what's the one supplement? So now you're switching from prescription drug to what's the one supplement I can use kill that symptom, right? And this, I mean, handling, there's nothing wrong with that thinking, but at the same time there is. And the problem is that when you have insulin resistance, you're gonna go more upstream and ask yourself, what gave you insulin resistance in the first place? And the answer is diet, right? Diet and drink and whatever you're drinking, and the amount of sugar you're consuming, and processed carbohydrates, and the inflammation that's in the body. So there's a lot of wonderful books just going on Amazon that can create meal plans and diets for you. We have one of our tenets in our hormones balance approach. You see, if you want to have balanced hormones, I'm not going to be sending you all over the place going like, buy this supplement, buy that supplement. The first thing I will always urge you to do, if you follow us for a while, you know that the first thing I want you to do is to look at your diet, right? And in all my books, I talk about the 3-stool analogy. That if you want to sit comfortably on those tiny little baby, like the toddler stools, they have like 3 legs, right? If you want to sit comfortably on those, all the 3 legs need to be in place and they need to be firm. If one of the legs is either too short, is flimsy, or it's missing, right? Well, you're going to start wobbling, right? So what do? You just make sure. And so in the context of hormones, if you want to have stable, balanced hormones, it's the 3 legs. It's your digestion, it's your blood sugar levels, and it's your liver health. So which means that if one of the legs, like for example, let's say, your liver function is really poor, very normal. As we age, our liver is just not the same, right? Think about it. Like in college, you had 5 shots of tequila. You'd be like, wake up the next morning, no problem. Try to do 5 shots of tequila now when you're in your 50s or 60s, right? You'd be like, the next morning, like, give me these 3 cups of coffee because I'm just feeling like death. It's the liver function. Your liver is just not as efficiently detoxing you as it did when you were in your 20s. So that's your liver digestion. I talk a lot about it. It's all in my books. And then the third one is blood sugar balance. So if you have my book, Lindsay, either one, Cooking for Hormone Balance or Overcoming Estrogen Dominance, you can look at the chapter about sugar balance. There's a lot of things, how to change your diet. And there's a couple of supplements, or herbs that have been proven to show a lot of efficacy, such as cinnamon, such as fenugreek, right? Inositol. All those things are wonderful supplements. But again, I always say you cannot out-supplement a bad diet. Meaning that if you are like waking up first thing in the morning, you're like chugging down smoothies because somebody told you the smoothies are really healthy. And then when you actually get to know like how much sugar there is in that smoothie, right? Then you're actually giving yourself a sugar high, which kind of continues then for the rest of the day. Then, that's something that needs to change, right? And this is the reason why if you guys have my books, then you know that, one of the things that I'm a big proponent of is savory breakfasts and not sweet breakfast, right? So, okay, so that's about insulin resistance. Let's see. Jen, let me just do one more thing here. Patty's asking about recovering from respiratory virus with a persistent cough. Will the quercetin help with my recovery? Patty, you're asking the right person because I am struggling right now. Well, I'm like 90% recovered from, and probably say that, and then I'm gonna get like a coughing attack. And all of you are going to be like, yeah, right. So I had COVID a month ago and I pretty quickly recovered from it. Like within a week, I was like back on my feet. What I didn't recover from is my lungs. And so my lungs have always been my Achilles heel. And what happened was I was coughing like crazy. In fact, I was coughing so hard that now my back is out and my SI joint is completely jammed up. So that's another healing story to be told. But I've done a lot of work on the respiratory stuff. And so the persistent cough. So yes, the quercetin nettles are huge. Quercetin has got a lot of research showing the efficacy for lung health. But that's not complete picture. So let me give you a couple of other things to look into. Get resveratrol. That's also extremely helpful. Get Nigella sativa. I think one of the best Nigella sativa ones I got, it was from Gaia, Gaia. They have a wonderful one. And taking that a couple of times a day. There is also a wonderful formulation that I felt like really moved the needle for me. And that's those are supplements from Gaia as well. One is called Mighty Lungs, and the other one is called Lung and Bronchitis Wellness Syrup or something. Wellness. It's a capsule as well. So now the other thing that made a huge difference in my own journey is, and this is, you guys, I'm talking about this like this is on top of my baseline supplements, which is like magnesium, B vitamin, D3, heaps of vitamin C. I'm taking the Amla one from our vitamin C, natural food derived one, the vitamin C complete. And the thing that made the biggest difference, you guys, is nebulizing. And nebulizing means that, actually, let me show you because I've got it actually sitting right here. Nebulizer is basically you put some liquid inside this little thing. There is a compressor that's on the table. You turn it on, and then you inhale. This will turn the water into mist, and you're inhaling that. So the baseline will be saline, which is water, basically 7% water, salt water. But I found like that was not good enough. So I started sprinkling in NaC into it, and that made a profound difference because NaC converts into glutathione. And I felt like finally I was able to breathe again. I wasn't having these coughing spells. And mind you, one of the tricky things about respiratory health is then you go like, oh, I'm feeling better. I can stop now. You want to continue for like 2 weeks to a month after that, because this virus, this lab mate thing is no joke. And I know some of you have recovered and you are like happy campers, and it's all great. I envy you and I congratulate you that that's you. And then some of us, it just brings up a lot of our sensitivities and just makes it really quite awful. So don't buy those nebulizers that are like those little tiny ones you can walk around the house and stuff. These things, mine lasted 2 weeks and then it fell apart. I think putting the NaC, it kind of like killed it. So I've got a compressor, like a full-on compressor like this, and so this is like a real proper machine, and it just doesn't seem to be bothered what the heck I'm putting into my nebulizer here. So yeah, so that's so I hope this is helpful. All right, Jen, let's go over to Facebook. And what's the best method to monitor your hormones? Jennifer is asking. So that's a good question. So I think, if you are I think two schools of thought. One is I just go by my symptoms, right? And, when our quiz is up, then you will see it. If you are still following us on social media, we're going to do a big push for it so that you guys can really, use it, and it gives you some clarity of what's your hormonal stuff. So you can go by symptoms, or you can go by measuring it, right? And measuring is when it comes to steroid hormones, which is like DHEA, testosterone, cortisol, progesterone, estrogen, and how some of them gets broken down. Urine and Dutch testing is really great. So Dutch is DUTCH. DutchTest.com is the website. And so that's a good one to use. When it comes to other hormones, such as insulin, your blood sugar levels, thyroid hormone, blood is perfectly fine. In fact, you can order all of them on. We have like a special relationship with yourlabwork.com, and they created specific panels for us with a special discount that we're just passing on to you guys. Jen, if we can maybe pop that up, is yourlabwork.com/hormonesbalance. Hormones balance. So yourlabwork.com/hormonesbalance. And that is that's one place you can. Let me get some water so that I don't start coughing again. All right, next question. Can hormone imbalance affect your electrolytes? No, I think it's rather the other way around. The electrolytes, actually, lack of electrolytes can affect your hormonal imbalance. One of the things that electrolytes do is they really help your cell uptake of hormones. And so if you are lacking, in fact, the water I'm drinking right now, you can't see this, but there's electrolytes in there. And so it's really important. So electrolytes, not in the form of like drinking Gatorade, because the amount of sugar and the amount of chemicals that's in there, it doesn't serve anyone any good. And so, one of the things that I found kind of off-putting was that the first thing I did when I was diagnosed with COVID a month ago is I called a mobile IV. There's a mobile IV, right? So to get nutritional IVs immediately, including NAD, which shows to really help with COVID symptoms. And the lady, the nurse who was on the way, she calls me and she says, like, do you need anything? I can pick up a bunch of Gatorades for you. And I found it so off-putting. I'm thinking like, oh wow, you're doing, health stuff, and you're giving your patients Gatorade. It's like, why do nutritional IVs, to help yourself, and then at the same time you're loading up your patients on sugar? I found it very, very off-putting, and I never wanted to work with that company again. So anyway, so electrolytes. Do electrolytes? What kind of electrolytes is in your water? Gina is asking. I got it on Amazon. I believe it is from. Just Google it. Just like electrolytes without or okay. Let me just go on Amazon and just quickly tell you what is it that I'm. Okay, so what are the questions? Good questions that we. I'm gonna do liquid, not powder. Minus. So make sure that the biggest thing is just make sure that there's no water, there's no sugar in your electrolytes. I'm logging into a different account, and so I'm not really getting the brand that I'm using. Oh, there we go. Trace Minerals is the brand I really like. 4,000 volts liquid electrolyte concentrate drops. Okay. All right. Doris is saying, good afternoon. Any suggestions for perimenopausal women who also have endometriosis and possibly endometriosis? Are they really like blood suckers and cause anemic fatigue and sluggishness? Yes, they do. And so, Doris, a couple of things. Both of them are, what's interesting about it, that both of them are caused by estrogen dominance. So if you don't have my book, Overcoming Estrogen Dominance, I highly recommend it. You can easily get it on Amazon. And if you're overseas, by the way, if you just go to overcomingestrogendominance.com, you can buy the book and just pay for shipping. It is expensive to ship it international. We don't mark it up. We just pass it on to you guys. I can't control how USPS is charging for things. So anyway, so there's a whole protocol on how to change your diet and what supplements will help. In our store, we have a supplement called Fibro Support, and it basically is an enzyme called nattokinase. And nattokinase has got wonderful research that shows that it actually loves to chomp down on fibrin. Fibrin is what fibroid tissue is made of. Endometriosis, additional component to endometriosis, apart from the estrogen dominance element, is inflammation. So this is the reason why, it's not one thing, it's a combination of things. If you want to deal with endometriosis, is really about lowering your inflammation. Some people believe that endometriosis is an autoimmune condition, which kind of goes back to everything I'm saying is, when you have an autoimmune disease, you want to address your gut health, you want to lower your inflammation, right? Estrogen, by the way, estrogen dominance is also highly inflammatory. So, when you have estrogen dominance and too much estrogen, you're also driving up inflammation. When you lower your inflammation overall, your estrogen is going to help your estrogen dominance as well. And that estrogen is not going to be as inflammatory, if you will, right? So it's all the protocols are there, Doris. Okay, let me do one. Hold on, Jen. Let me just do one from Instagram. Yeah, someone is saying everyone defines inflammatory foods differently. Yeah. Patty is saying, where do I find information to do the elimination diet? So Patty, my books, both my books, Cooking for Hormone Balance and Overcoming Estrogen Dominance, both are based on the elimination diet. So it's true that everybody defines the elimination diet differently. And so one thing I would just tell you that right away, and I say this in my books, that I do not proclaim myself to have a perfect diet for everyone. If anyone is telling you that they have all the dietary nutritional answers for what is your specific diet, run, because that's total bullshit. Like, it just does not exist. See, like, your diet might be very different from my diet, right? For instance, let's just take eggs as a good example, right? Eggs can be highly inflammatory. I mean, I get very much attacked by a lot of people when I say that, because they go like, eggs are the perfect food. I get it. It can be a perfect food. Guess what? Eggs what eggs cause me? I get like zits all over my face. I get fatigued. My friend was just here over the weekend, and she's like, I can't do eggs anymore. I am tired and my brain doesn't work. I worked with people before who have eggs and get anxiety and they feel nauseous, right? But there's a lot of you who are thriving on eggs, and eggs are not your problem. So is your diet going to be the same as my diet? No. I don't produce enough of probably lactase, which means that I don't digest food very easily. Fat very easily, right? So, for example, yesterday I had some leftover salmon and leftover avocado, and I mashed it together with some dill and olive oil. So a lot of fat, right? And I put it on top of a toast, and it was very delicious. But guess what? The amount of fat was just too much for me. And by 2 hours later, I'm like, oh, like my brain isn't working. I'm tired now. I need like another cup of, tea and caffeine to pick me up, right? And so, but some of you here who are doing keto, you're like, bring on the keto. Like, I love my fat. I feel great on fat. I've done keto and I felt terrible. So, that's the problem. That's the challenge with a healthy diet is like, you need to experiment a little to kind of learn to figure out what agrees with you. I don't have the answer. No one should have the answer to what it is. People who just go like, keto is the only way for menopausal women. I'll say, you know what? That's not true, because I tried it and I felt great for the first 3 weeks, and after that I crashed, right? So anyway, the way I approach things is that I developed the elimination diet based on the fact that there's a lot of people who have problems with gluten, dairy, soy, corn, eggs. And then I took out nightshade vegetables, meaning potatoes, tomatoes, eggplants, peppers are out. Why? Because a lot of people have a problem with it. Do you have to avoid tomatoes for the rest of your life? No. And I teach there in the book how to reintroduce these foods, and your body will tell you whether that food is your friend, does not impact you at all. In fact, maybe you feel great when you have that food. Or do you feel exhausted, tired, and you get zits all over your face, you get depressed and all that, like the way, for example, I would do with gluten, right? So that's basically, how I teach them things. And that's how no one can define what is inflammatory to you. You need to find out what is inflammatory to you by doing the elimination diet, as you eliminate, these few foods. It could be that, let me give you an example. It could be like, I worked with a woman when I was still in private practice. I worked with a woman who, we did the elimination diet, and her thing was banana bread and this and that. So she learned how to do gluten-free banana bread with no eggs and stuff. Great. And then it turned out that she was still very symptomatic. I think in her case, she was still having like rashes and stuff on the skin. And we just could not figure out what it was. And so she ended up doing a food sensitivity test. Turned out the banana and cinnamon, which were like staples in her home, were the problem. So she eliminated the bananas and the cinnamon, and all her skin issues cleared out, right? So how random, but that's just her. And we need to honor that and learn what our inflammatory foods are. So there is no list. You need to figure out what the list is. I'm just giving you the tools on how to find that out. By the way, in my first book, Cooking for Hormone Balance, I also explain when you reintroduce foods, how to go deeper and then kind of like take off the next layer of the onion. So for example, let me give you an example. You've done the elimination diet with me, and you're like feeling somewhat better, right? But then you reintroduce foods and you're like, oh, you're keeping a food journal, right? And that's one of the things I teach there too. You do the food journal and you're like, I had sauerkraut this morning, and it kind of like, I'm itchy now, and my nose is all stuffy, right? And so in the book, I teach you there, I'm like, if these foods, like having a glass of wine, hopefully not in the morning, but you know what I mean, right? Like having in the evening, or having sauerkraut or something fermented, you're having a piece of salami or whatever, and you're suddenly feeling off, that could be because you might be having a problem with histamine, right? So that kind of sends you in a direction of investigating further. Maybe histamine is my problem, and so on and so forth. So I really want to give you like a map of how to navigate your health, rather than be giving a definitive prescription of what to do that's going to work for everyone, because that won't be truthful. All right, Jen, let's go on to the other side. Andrea saying, started Progest Pure Cream this week, first time, a bit nervous about it, doing something wrong, doing 4 pumps a day, so 100 milligrams a day. So it's not 100 milligrams. You're doing 25 milligrams. So 4 pumps will give you 25 milligrams. Should I start there or go to 200 milligrams? That's what people do. I have seen concerns around weight gain if dose is too low. Please advise also what is estrogen, kickback, and how to avoid them as I start the cream. So so first of all, just big correction. Jen, let's put that back on. So first correction is that our 4 pumps gives you 25 milligrams. And if your symptoms do not improve, which will be things like sleep is not improving, your sense of anxiety is not improving, right? Like if you are having irregular periods, that's not improving, your hot flashes are not improving, then yeah, you can go up to 50 milligrams. I think that's totally acceptable as well. Concerns about weight gain, very rare, and especially if the dose is too low. No, the weight gain, if it's to happen, it will be when you go up the dose. Estrogen kickback. So we can take the thing down. Thanks, Jen. So the interesting interplay between when a person can get a reaction to too much progesterone happens actually in the presence of estrogen dominance. Why? Because it's actually estrogen that upregulates progesterone receptors. I repeat this. It's estrogen dominance and too much of estrogen that upregulates progesterone receptors. So for example, in the case of women who have estrogen receptor positive breast cancers, it is not the progesterone that's causing the problem, is the excess estrogen and the dirty estrogen metabolites that are upregulating the progesterone receptors. So now the progesterone, the tumor also has progesterone receptors. So you need to understand it's not the progesterone is causing the cancer, is the inflammatory responses, is the DNA damage, is the estrogen excess that are contributing factors towards breast cancers. Okay. Next one, let's do another one on this side here. I can't digest vegetables anymore. I can't tolerate fermented foods. Is anything you recommend? So when you say you can't digest vegetables, I would want to ask more questions like which vegetables? Is it cooked vegetables? Generally, if you want to have easy digestion, it's using cooked vegetables is important, not salads. Salads is kind of like a Western innovation, if you will. Like if you look at traditional cuisines from around the world, 90% of food is always being cooked, and including vegetables. It doesn't have to be like grandma style of cooking your broccoli until like it falls apart and stinks up the whole house of sulfur. But it can be lightly cooked, but it is definitely cooking vegetables can help. You can't tolerate fermented foods. I'm curious what the symptoms could be, or that could be due to estrogen dominance. And so, okay, Michelle is saying all vegetables are cooked and raw. Okay, so just try cooked first. I mean, that will be the first thing. The other thing you can do, Michelle, is introduce digestive enzymes to help your body digest things. That's not okay, right? And when you're having that kind of stuff, when you can't tolerate fermented foods, it could be histamine intolerance, histamine sensitivity. It's not a sentence for life, you guys. Like a lot of people think like, oh my God, I'm going to be on a low histamine diet for the rest of my life. I can't have my sauerkraut or a glass of wine. No, it doesn't have to be that way. I know plenty of people who've been having who had histamine problems in the past, and then they lower the inflammation in the body, and the tolerance level for histamine has gone up significantly. So it's completely doable. So you need to address the histamine issue. I don't specialize in that kind of work because it's pretty complex, and I think hormones is complex enough, so I can't take on another project. But there's a couple of resources I recommend to look up. Dr. Beth O'Hara, Mastcell360 is her website.com, and she has a lot of resources on how to lower your histamine levels. All right, let me just jump on to Instagram so the Instagrammers don't feel So Lane of Meadows is asking, how about using only estriol versus estradiol? Ever okay in any instance? Yeah, sure, it is. It kind of, the question is kind of, you have to understand, like, you're not giving me any context, right? Meaning, like, what are the symptoms that are going on? What are you trying to fix? Estriol is helpful to a certain degree. It's a very, very mild estrogen. If somebody is very low on estrogens, then one of my recommendations is to first of all try phytoestrogens, so naturally occurring estrogens. You'll find that in flaxseed, For example, one of the smoothies, and I have the recipe on that on Instagram, is, one of my favorite ways of bringing up my own estrogen levels. I've not come to the point yet where I need to depend on estrogen, bioidentical estrogen, and so I'm gonna wait a little bit longer unless I start showing symptoms. And so right now, my symptoms are mild enough for me to just try to fix it through phytoestrogens, meaning having a couple of tablespoons of flaxseed added to a smoothie. So my smoothie has got no sugar in it whatsoever. The smoothie that you will find on Instagram, there's like a quick video that I did showing you how to do it. It's got a couple of tablespoons of flaxseed. It's got some pumpkin seeds. It has a whole bunch of my own homegrown sprouts, broccoli sprouts, and then squeeze in some lemon, salt, and put it in a blender with water. It's just a nice, wonderful, a bit of sea salt that I mentioned that, and makes it really quite delicious. Today I made it as well. I had a bunch of parsley, and so I put a whole bunch of parsley in there as well and blended it all up. It's delicious and beautiful and green. So yeah, so you can definitely correct your dropping estrogen levels. By the way, you guys, name some of the, I'm gonna quiz you here as well, so you guys can do some talking as well. Do some state some of the symptoms of low estrogen. What do you think symptoms of low estrogen are? And hint, that's menopause, right? So just in case you're not familiar with that. So estriol, go back to your question, Lane of Meadows, is that estriol is not going to correct that many symptoms. Estriol will correct only some of them. It's a very mild estrogen. So it kind of depends on what you're trying to fix. Estriol can also be very helpful for vaginal dryness. What's considered a healthy menopause? I love this question. Let me answer that question. That's a really good one. So we are preparing some resources for you for next week, talking about menopause. And, and so the best way I can describe it is that when you feel like you're sailing into a new phase of your life, rather than be going through a storm, right? And so this is like, I kind of always, I don't know, for some reason, I always visualize like being on a surfboard and just kind of like going with the waves and knowing how to master the waves and navigating the waters, right? And it's like nice and easy and fun. A little bit, you're going to be mindful, and it can be at times a little challenging, but it's not a storm. You're not like sinking and drowning, and you know what I mean, right? And so, and waking up in hot sweats and having, cognitive issues, right? And you go to see a doctor and you're like, you got osteopenia, right? And all of that. So a healthy menopause basically means that your period is slowing down. Now it's nice and easy, meaning that at first in perimenopause, your period is going to get shorter and shorter. Your cycle is going to be going from 28 days, maybe down to 21 days. Instead of being 5 days of period, you go down to 2-3 days, and eventually finally disappears. 1 whole month without a period. You might be seeing certain, a lot of energetically. So I think there's physiological and energetic changes in the women in menopause, right? I'm talking more about the physiological changes when you go, so, I might need to do, like, I might protect my sleep. I might be very protective of my sleep because I feel way better when I'm sleeping, right? And maybe I need to correct something a little bit. Maybe let me add on a little bit of that phytoestrogens that Magdalena is talking about, that flaxseed. Maybe I could do a little bit of progesterone at night to help me sleep. And so you just basically, there's going to be changes, okay? We had a writer who, thank goodness, is not working with us anymore. And she will write copy such as ways to combat menopause. And I'm like, there's nothing to combat. Like, you don't fight menopause. It's the most natural progression in our lives. In fact, let me talk about the energetic side of things. Energetically speaking, menopause can be an incredibly wonderful time for a woman's hormones and her new chapter of life. So how many of you here can relate to when I say, menopause is a time for those of you who are entering that phase, or maybe you've already entered it, and you're feeling like a sense of like, finally, I can take care of myself. I don't have any dependencies anymore. My kids are out, they're independent. I can finally take care of myself. This is the time for me. Is it time to flourish? Maybe is it time to discover some new passions and interests and that I've always had, but I just never had the time for it, such as maybe painting. I want to write. I want to do some shamanic workshops, whatever it might be, right? Maybe I want to learn a new skill. It maybe is also a time for you when your tolerance for bullshit is like zero. And that is great because you're like, I will need to protect my own energy. I have now clear boundaries. Do not ask me for stuff. I don't want to go to places I don't care about. I don't want to say yes to things I don't care about. I don't want to go to weddings for people that I don't care about. And so like your sense of self becomes stronger and you suddenly realize I am a superpower and I am in my power in my menopause. And I really, wish for all of you by fixing your physiological symptoms, you can energetically then feel this way because it's hard to energetically feel the way I'm describing this. Just when you are like plagued by hot flashes, and you're incontinent, you go to the gym, and you're like, oh my god, what has just happened, right? I mean, it's hard to be like energetically in that place, right? So my job here is to help you with the physiological side of things so that you can sail through menopause. So thank you for that question. I think it was a wonderful question just to talk about. And yeah, okay. Let's do one or two more questions, Jan, from this side here. So the question is, I have had blood work and my progesterone is almost non-existent. Is supplementing with your Progespure, will it show improvement in blood work? If retesting blood work, how long would one need to stop the supplement to get accurate blood work and that's not impacted by the supplement? So a few things here. First of all, you do not use blood testing for steroid hormones. So I've mentioned that just now. And so because it's not going to show you the accurate reading. Just to give you a sense of context, you guys, when I was in private practice, I had women coming in and saying, I just did the blood work for my hormones and my doctor says everything is perfect. Like, it's fine. And then this person, and this is a woman who's saying, who's having terrible PMSs. She has a history of breast cancer in the family. Excuse me. She's got 2 fibroids, right? She's got polyps, etc. You get the point. But everything is fine. So, and then when we, back when I was in practice, we will do saliva testing because urine wasn't developed yet. I think I've been talking too much and I got too enthusiastic. So then this person would then get saliva testing done, and we are like, oh yeah, things are not okay. Your progesterone is terribly high. Your progesterone is too low, right? And blood work would not show any of that. So first of all, do not use blood to get your steroid hormones tested, meaning progesterone, estrogen, testosterone, DHEA, cortisol. Okay, you want to do the best of the golden standard now is urine testing. Like I mentioned, Dutch, DUTCH. Yeah, so Andrea is saying, weird how doctors say everything is fine and it's not. Yeah, so classic. I mean, that's why you're here, right? To empower yourself and know what to do. Okay, so this is where, and then the other part of the question was about, sorry, Jen, I forgot what was the second part. Okay, so and then the second thing is, there is 2 schools of thought on whether do you stop your hormones when you do the testing or you don't. I've spoken to a lot of my colleagues who are functional practitioners, MDs, NDs, nurse practitioners, and the consensus is do not stop your hormones, because the thought is that you want to know the currently what are you taking, like how is that impacting, like is it sufficient or not, do you need to up it, do you need to, and especially for someone who, like you said just now, that your progesterone is extremely low, then and it will show. So you're gonna give it it will show pretty quickly, but I would say be on it for at least a month before testing. And if I were you, I will stick to taking it and then do the blood test. Urine test, and then decide from there: is it enough, or do you need to up the dose, or do you need to change anything? So typically, that's the best practice. Okay. So let me see. Lindsay is asking, what are the essential vitamins we should be taking when we enter 40? So Lindsay, take a look at our wellena.com website. There is a kit called Thriving 50s. And so when I turned 50 in January, so just 4 months ago, I turned 50. And we put a pack together of like, what are the supplements that I attribute feeling good and kind of thriving in my 50s, right? And so that could be a really great starting point. My baseline, I mean, we didn't want the kit to be too expensive, but I'll just tell you that my baseline is vitamin. So this is stuff that I take on a daily basis because you just cannot find enough of that in food. That's B vitamins. I take magnesium malate in the morning because that's energizing for me, malate form. And we have all of the supplements I'm mentioning. It's in our store. It's called Mac Energy. And then I take magnesium replenish, which is magnesium glycinate at night to help me sleep. I take zinc, really important zinc for both the immune system as well as for progesterone production. I take vitamin C for collagen. Actually, vitamin C helps your collagen production. It's a nice plump skin. I do not Botox. And then we also have vitamin C helps you with obviously your immune system. It helps you with progesterone production, right? Let's see, what else do I take? I often take, not always, but I often take our sulforaphane. So it's called Broca Power, just because I'm a terrible estrogen metabolizer. So sulforaphane is super helpful for that. I also take, let's see what else. Jen, what else is there in a Thriving kit? I'm kind of blanking out. I do progesterone at night. Okay. And then you saw me talking about minerals. So trace minerals in the water every day. We don't sell that I got on Amazon from Trace Minerals, that lovely brand. So yeah, those are some of the things I feel like those are real baseline things that really is going to support anyone. And then everything else after that becomes, depending on the symptoms. This question is about NAC dissolving in the water. Yes, it does. You just have to like shake it up and it dissolves, but don't put too much because it can be really, it's like the first time I try, I was like, okay, those are, I think, pretty old comments. I'm just gonna scroll down to the bottom of things. Jen, let's do one more question before wrapping up. You guys, I need to preserve my, oh, hold on. There's one, and Anna Chico is saying, what's your take on fibrocystic breast and lumps? Does lymphatic cleanse help? My practitioner told my breast tissue is all lymph. Yes. You're in luck because we actually have a product we released last year. It's called Happy Sisters. So for those of you who are struggling with breast health, so like fibrocystic breast, benign lumps. So when I say lumps, make sure you have the lump checked, that it's not carcinogenic in any way. That is not a cancerous. You make sure you had your lump checked out. Okay, so basically that's the bottom line. If it's a benign lump, then whether it's cyclical or non-cyclical, we have a great product called Happy Sisters, and it's a supplement that helps to three things: lower inflammation, it helps with estrogen dominance, so how estrogens are broken down, and then it helps with lymphatics. So it uses things like red root, which is an amazing herb that helps move the lymphatic system, and then it comes with a cream, and the cream, we also show you instructions how to massage your breast and how to open up the lymphatic system in the breast, and using the wonderful herbs that we have in there, including poke root, including St. John's wort, Nigella sativa oil, ginger oil, and I'm probably forgetting some other wonderful things that there's in there. Okay, one more question, Jen, and then we can wrap up. Let's pick a good one. Is Mirena coil a substitute for progesterone? No. So no, it's not. So there's a short answer. It only works locally. It's not progesterone, it's progestin. And so no. Okay. Maybe let's do one more if you can find a good one, something that will benefit everyone. Can taking flaxseed affect you how you control your emotions? Sarah is asking. That's a good question. So let me just backtrack a little bit. Flaxseed is a natural it contains natural phytoestrogens. So it contains flavonoids, which are basically in the lignans of the seed, and so it's not the oil, you guys. It's found in the fiber, and so those flavonoids can be that are very gentle phytoestrogens. Now, what we have found is that as much as it can help a lot of people, in fact, for those of you who know seed rotation, you've done seed rotation from our resources, you know that it can be super helpful with regulating your hormone cycles, hot flashes, etc. What is also happening is that there is always a sliver of population who have an adverse reaction to an herb or a food, right? And flaxseed is one of them. So I would say like maybe 1 out of 20 people, and this is totally anecdotal, it's just an observation. Women, occasionally we have women telling us, you know what, I took flaxseed, my boobs became really painful. My flashes got worse, right? And I can't sleep or I can't control my emotions. And what we have, and then so when I first started hearing this, I was like, well, that's really weird. But then I did a lot of research on it, and I actually wrote an article about flaxseed. So if you go to hormonesbalance.com, there's a whole article that I wrote about flaxseed, the wonderful benefits of it, but also why is it that some women have a paradoxical reaction to it, right? And the answer I found is that those lignans need to be converted, broken down, metabolized in the gut in the presence of a bacterial. You basically got to have good microbiome, right? And for those people who have a poor microbiome, what happens then is they don't metabolize those flavonoids very well, right? Those lignans in flaxseed, and instead, basically, they're having a paradoxical reaction. I wish that I could tell you that research, unfortunately, did not specify what kind of bacteria, like what kind of strains of bacteria. And so the conclusion, in my view, would be that generally you want to have just a healthy microbiome. Doing the elimination diet, eliminating inflammatory foods help the microbiome to revive itself. Adding fermented foods, adding a variety of different probiotics or soil biotics or spore-based probiotics or spore biotics, right? Depending on what are you low on, all of those things can really help a lot. But that's basically and that's something consistently we find this like in my book, Overcoming Estrogen Dominance. Like if you look at the gut chapter, I talk about I talk about the research that I have found that shows that women with a poor microbiome, diversity, right? So the diversity of the bacteria in the microbiome had a much higher chance of developing breast cancer. So basically what they did was they took all the breast cancer patients, and then when they compare it to healthy subjects, they have found that women with breast cancer have a much poorer diversity of the microbiome. So in some ways, it is a canary in the mind, I think, that when you're not breaking down those flaxseeds very well, it's kind of telling you increase the biodiversity of your microbiome, right? And I cannot tell you, there's no one single probiotic that I would recommend. It really depends on what are you low on. If you're concerned about your microbiome diversity, you should work with a practitioner who specializes in gut health. Do some like GI test, or there's all sorts of different, microbiome testing labs these days that can tell you how to change that. And there is no solution for everyone, because like some people will take, like I will take soil-based probiotics. Doesn't do anything for me. I will take some other probiotics, and sometimes I feel better, and sometimes it makes no difference. So so that's the answer. Flaxseed, paradoxical reaction, most likely lack of diversity of the microbiome. All right, you guys, I better preserve my voice for the rest of the day. I still got a few other videos to do. I hope you have a wonderful midweek. And I welcome you tomorrow. Hopefully see some of you when I'm talking to Dr. Isabella Wins. We're going to be talking about adrenal health and menopause, and how adrenals impact your menopause, and also other hormones. And so it's going to be a really fun one. So I hope some of you would join us there as well. All right. Thanks, everyone. And I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.